In this video, we will learn how to create custom scope in Spring application. Spring provides built-in scopes such as singleton scope, prototype scope. The meaning of scope for a bean is that a bean will be created and destroyed in that scope. This will be the life cycle within that scope. Singleton scope is a default scope of a bean in a Spring container. In this scope, Spring creates only one instance of the bean and it is served for every request for that bean. Prototype scope, Spring container creates new instance of bean for each and every request for that bean. There are other scopes such as session scope, application scope, request scope. Here I will create my own custom scope for the thread. It means the scope of the thread will be the life cycle of the thread. Thread will be created and thread will be destroyed. Within that life cycle, bean will also be created and will be destroyed. So this will be a custom scope for a bean that will be in the thread scope. So let's see how to create our bean. Let's see how to create our scope. So first of all, what we have to do is we have to create a class, implement scope interface. We create the custom scope using scope interface. So what we have to do is create the class and implement scope interface. Scope interface provides methods such as get with this syntax, a string name and then object factory. Another is remove, then get conversion ID, register section callback, resolve contextual object. So we need to override as methods as much as we need it. So here I am overriding two methods, and for the other methods I am just returning null. So what I am overriding, this is the get and remove. What will I do? Let's see. First of all, I am creating a inner class that is a custom thread local, and inside that what I am doing is that I have a map, and whenever we call the initial value, we get the hash map object. Then create the object for that class. This is the object for that class which we have created, inner class, custom thread local. This is custom thread local. One thing important is that you need to extend thread local class to create this inner class. Now create the object of this class. Now come to the get method of the scope interface. What we have to do is get the object from the, first of all you have to get the object of scope from thread local, custom thread local, get, and from that scope you have to get the object for the given name. Suppose this is str variable, and I will get the object from that scope. If there is no object, if there is null, then what we will do that we will create object factory object and then put that object with that name. In this way, our get method has been defined. What did I do here? That first of all, create the map, that is a scope, basically maintaining scope. Map is here maintaining the scope. Okay, so first get the object, whether the object is already created or not. If that is null, then you have to get the object, that will create a new one for you, and then put that in scope. In this way we will return the object. This was the get. Every time Spring will call this method get to return us a object when we call this one context.getBean. Whenever we call, Spring will call this method get. And when the scope is finished, means if this is thread scope, then when the thread is going to be destroyed, then remove method will be called, and that object will be removed from that scope. Okay, what I'm doing here is that again I'm getting the scope as a map, and I'm just removing it. Two other methods are there. If you require, you can implement it. This is conversion ID just returns, this is registered exception callback, and this is resolve contextual object. Here I have implemented only two methods, get and remove. So in this way our custom 3D scope has been ready. This was the first step. Now we have to register it in our application. We can register it either using Java config or XML configuration. First of all, let's see using Java config. What we have to do here is that create a bean for custom scope configurer. Okay, create its object and call its add scope method and give a name. Suppose scope name is my thread scope. As other scope names are such as singleton is a scope name, prototype is a scope name. In the same way, we have to give a name that is my thread scope and pass the object which we have created implementing scope interface, this one. So in this way we added the scope, and now return this one. In this way our bean is ready, custom scope configurer, in which we have configured our custom scope. Now let's create a bean. I have a person class and I am creating here bean and giving a scope, my thread scope, which is I have created, and we have to configure using @scope annotation, pass the scope name such as we pass singleton prototype. In the same way pass our custom scope name. So this is @scope, my thread name, my scope name is my thread scope. So in this way we have created this, we have configured here the scope, our custom scope, and I have assigned it to our person bean. The bean name is person. Now what will I do is, here I have three threads. This is the bean for the thread scope. So what I am doing here, that I have three threads. First one is the main thread that I am not creating, it is by default here main thread. Two threads I am creating, use. This one is the first thread I am creating, and this one is the second one. In all the three threads, main threads and th1 threads and th2 threads, I am creating, or I am getting person object two times. So what will happen, that first time person object will be created. When it will be created, then we will get the log for this one, initialize custom thread local. And if we get only this message and not this one. It means we are getting data from cache. The object is being returned from the map. Okay, so what is happening here, that when first time we call this object, then person object will be created, but the second time when I am calling, we will not get the message that it is being created. Okay, in the same way, which the thread which we have created, the same thing happen. First time object will be created and second time not. In this third thread, the same thing, object will be created first time and second time it will not be created. Let's see by the output. Look here, there are 6 times we have called that person object, but this message I am getting only 3 times. 1, 2 and 3. In this way we see that the person object has been created 3 times because there are 3 threads, and in the same thread if I am calling bean more than one time, then it is not being created, we are getting from cache. Okay, so in this way we can create our custom scope using scope interface. Okay, thank you.